Hello, Cancer. Thank you very much for tuning in to this week's read. For the main part of the read, I'm using Bonefire Tarot by Gabby Angus West. Website is schifferbooks.com here on the side if you'd like to look that up. Hopefully it focused. Okay. Supportive Oracle Cards, Magical Spell Cards by Lucy Cavendish. There is a website. I never noticed it before. Just popped in. I don't know if somebody emailed it to me either, but hayhouse.com, hayhouse.com. It is there. It is a deck from 2002, so if it's going to still be active, I don't know. Hay House, I think, is still a very active brand, though, so you might have to look it up a different way. If you look in like a search engine like Bing or something, you might find it. What do we have for Cancer? I have a really good feeling all of a sudden. You're taking something by the horns. Like, I get... Okay, let's see. I wouldn't say the cards are guaranteeing a good time, but something like really makes me feel like you're headed in a good direction. Okay. This is a situation you've put a lot of thought into. I feel like you've been trying to stay out of it, but you're putting a lot of thought into it. Kind of like... It kind of gives me this grandmother feeling. Kind of like, I'm not the one raising the children right now. And if I want to be effective, I have to choose my words carefully. I have to work with who I know. I have to be thoughtful and think about, there's a difference between being right and being effective. Somebody told me that years ago, and I've been learning it ever since. It makes sense to me. Like, you can be right as rain, but if somebody doesn't want to hear that, and they're just kind of twisting it around and using it in a whole different way, the fact that you gave the right information could be completely ineffective. Especially when you have to give that information to someone else and you're depending on them to use it. So it's kind of like, what do you want to happen out of the situation versus just putting out the information like, that's not right, this is how that goes. And then somebody can just take that information and do whatever they feel like with it. So it's like being effective is like finding a way to get the information across in a way that it's used the way you intend it to be used. It's kind of like having like a knife. Like, this knife is to cut bread. So you're trying to show that that's the intention, that's what this, you're getting the information across, like, I know you have some bread, you need that, here, try this tool to get that bread cut. Versus just giving somebody a knife, and then they're just deciding, well, I've decided I'm going to cut cardboard with it, or who knows what, I'm going to use it as a throwing knife and do some do some practice throwing knives with it, because some people are into that. You know what I mean? That's the difference. And I get that you already are on board with this. It feels to me like you're already kind of like, yeah, that's one of the reasons I hold back. Because I say one thing and something totally different than what I intended is happening, and I'm not in that. I'm not into that. So I'm not going to give out information just for it to cause the situation to get more difficult. And there's this in the situation, and they're just not letting me get around it. Because at first I saw the Five of Swords, and I'm definitely a reader that looks at the images and really absorbs that. Because the Five of Swords, stereotypically for me, is kind of like the fruitless win. That's not what I'm getting off this card. I'm getting like literally, combat fight. Like, there's literally a fight. Like, you can't get around that. There's also like the will. Somebody's blocking the ability to see somebody else's point of view, and they're just very staunch about this is how this works and this is how this goes, and they're very aggressive with it. So it's kind of like the unwillingness to see somebody else's point of view is what I'm also getting off of this. The Devil card is behind it. I know what I know. I'm right what I'm right. I've said this in the past, and now when I hear other people saying it, and if I, God forbid, hear myself saying it now, I cringe, because I hear it more, like, why this isn't the best thing to say, which some people might put in the comments that, all right, I'm just going to say it. If I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to let you know, or it's something along those lines, like, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. I never thought that as a bad thing until somebody pointed out, like, it's almost like saying, you can't tell me I'm wrong. I have to discover I'm wrong first. Because there's a lot of us who don't go into things trying to do the wrong thing. We try to do the right thing. And we go in with good intentions. We may be wrong with something and have no idea that we're wrong, completely oblivious. So when we say those things, like, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say so, or I'll be the first one to admit it, or I'll be the first one to point it out, it's kind of like stepping to the side and not realizing we don't go into things trying to make problems. Most of us don't. Well, we're just going to go that road. I know we have a lot of different versions of that. For the purpose of this reading, we're not going into something to cause things to go bad. We are feeling like we're right and we're going to do something to make it better. It may take somebody else pointing out in a very uncomfortable way that something is wrong. And the reason I'm bringing it up here is like this energy is very like they don't want to hear it. It's kind of like if I'm wrong, I'll know I'm wrong and I'll tell you that I'm wrong. You can't tell me I'm wrong. I will tell you if I'm wrong. And you're also standing outside of that energy. We all stand in that position sooner or later. That's a human thing. I just feel like that's a part of existence. We will always have this moment where somewhere where we thought we did the right thing and then later on we'll realize we just did not. And it's hard to sometimes look at, but every person has it. And they're in that energy right now, and I feel like you can relate, kind of like when you just can't see the other side of it at the time. You just can't see how there's a different way to look at it. It's a human thing to be able to do that. We all have these moments in our past where it's like, I thought for sure I was dead right, and that was how it was, and I knew I was right, and then so many years later I was like, oh, no, I don't think that was the best thing for me to do. At the time I did believe in it, but right now I don't think that's the best thing. And right now that's where they are. They're like, nope, I stand behind what I'm doing, I know what I'm doing, I know what I feel, I know what I'm saying, and they're not backing off. This is why you're kind of like trying not to get too deep into it, because you're like, that's a hard energy to come up against, because anything you say seems to be twisted back around, like, no, this is why I'm right. Actually, what you're saying makes me even more right, blah, 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 blah. That's a hard energy to start with. Now, for this to change, the opportunity has to present itself. Which, waiting for this, I feel like is really difficult, because the Six of Cups is what you're waiting for. This is a history card. This is kind of like when somebody looks back and they're like, what they've been doing this whole time, and they're realizing what I've been wanting to happen isn't happening. I love baking analogies, so I'm going to use it. I keep wanting to make cinnamon rolls, and I end up with a really salty bread, and I don't understand why. I've been doing it the same way the whole time. It just never works out. It is kind of like they have to realize something isn't there. Like, I put in like 3 cups of sugar. I don't understand why they keep ending up so salty. Even though maybe they're adding some other ingredients that have a really high salt content, and it's just overriding the sugar, which 3 cups of sugar, I don't know. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. It's kind of like working on something all this time and like, I know I'm right. I'm putting in all this sugar. I know I'm right. I know I'm right. I don't understand why it's not working. It just doesn't taste right. It doesn't taste good. But even though I know I'm right, it just is not working out, and I don't understand why. And that's their energy. Like, they're starting to get to the point where they're realizing it's not working out. And then the first thing on your side, when you start seeing the cracks in the surface, and we all have these moments, you know, we all have those moments. It's just a human thing. Sooner or later in life, we all have that version of that at some point. When I'm feeling it on your side, you got the Page of Cups with the energy. You're like, oh my God, I know what's not right here. Like, you're kind of like, yeah, 3 of those ingredients you should not be using. It's kind of like 3 of those ingredients, they are just working against you. But you know this person doesn't want to hear it. Because 2 of those ingredients, they're like, that's my secret recipe. That's my secret, you know, ingredient that makes it all great. And you're like, I don't think so. I think those are the ingredients that are screwing you over. And you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I want to tell them so bad. I just want to go in there and do it myself and show them how it should be done. But they're going to treat it like it's a whole different recipe. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to be like, well, yeah, but you're doing a whole different thing. So it's kind of like they're going to treat it like you're making a whole different dish. And you're like, no, these ingredients you're putting in, they're not good. They're just too salty. And you're kind of like, oh, I really want to. But at the same time, with that Page of Cups, you're like, I don't want to take advantage of this moment, literally, to make this person just feel like I'm taking advantage of the moment, and then just having it just whip right back around and go right back to start. We don't want to go back to do that. So it's kind of like I want to kind of offer some hints, but how can I prove it to them that those ingredients are not working? So it's kind of like I have to start getting in there and try to figure it out. So instead of telling them, I don't think these two ingredients are really good for this, I think they're too salty, I think they create more salt, or they have too high of a salt content there, and they're killing off your sugar, like they're way too much. I feel like what you're doing is you're kind of looking at this like, okay, so what other recipes do you use those two ingredients in? And you're like, let's try doing something else with those ingredients and try to get a better idea of how that ingredient works. I think this is how you're getting around it. Kind of like, instead of just going right for it saying, I don't think these two things should be here, let's just use those ingredients in different ways, in different recipes. What do they do on their own? What do they do with this? What do they do with that? What type of flavors do we get if we use them in other ways? And I feel like this is like, again, how you're being effective. It's not just about being right, it's about being effective. You're like, I want them to discover what these two ingredients, like how salty they really are. They don't seem to understand it for some reason. So let's get in there and let's do this with other things so they can see how salty they are. You're really teaching them a base component of this. You're being really smart. You're helping the situation heal. You're taking your time. You're looking at it from different angles. Kind of like, I got to take what's right and what's wrong, and I have to teach them, like, we got to keep using these ingredients, but I have to teach them what these ingredients are really doing, what the effect really is, and you're stabilizing it. Because you're not only, like, showing them, like, I don't think this ingredient belongs in this recipe, you're teaching them this is what that ingredient actually does. When you want something more salty, maybe then you want to add this in. Maybe you also learn, through this ingredient, it makes things like more flat, like they don't rise. Like this person wants cinnamon buns that will rise, and they keep getting ones that are salty and flat, and they're just not doing it. And you're also teaching them, not only does it make things salty, it makes things flat. And maybe you're learning that too during this, like, oh yeah, like it makes them flat too. And when you learn something extra about this element that they didn't know either, that's kind of bonding you a little bit tighter. Like, oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, me either. Oh wow, that's cool, that's good to know. Not cool that it's been a roadblock, but cool like, oh, yeah, maybe that hasn't been working. You are stabilizing this for them. You're taking the other way. You're taking another way to, like, let's search out this element. Let's use it. Let's see what else we can do with it. Let's see what it really does on its own with other things. Like, let's really learn about this component. It could be a people thing, I get that, but I feel like you know where to take this. You're stabilizing this. It's also helping you get a better bond with this person. They're more confident that you're trying to see it their way. I feel like they come up with a lot of people who like are in direct contrast against them, and it's kind of like your energy, they seem to trust it more like you're trying to see it their way. You're really trying to, and you're like, if there's a way to do it, let's search it out. I'll help you find it. I want you to be right. You're kind of having that energy, like, I'd like you to be right. Let's find out. We'll find out together. They're trusting you more, kind of like when you don't think something's going to work, you're trying to see it their way first, but if you're like, no, I really don't, here's why, let's figure it out, they trust you more. And that, like, I don't know if that comes across right. It's kind of like they just feel that good intention, like you're really trying. If there's a way to see it their way, you're trying to. Any angle you can find that goes to their benefit, you're trying to do that, but you're also trying to be very honest. I feel like this is helping them, because I'm getting the romance card with the mermaid magic seduction. They just feel hurt. I feel like this person just needed to feel heard. Because I also feel like when you're looking back on this situation, like, you have a lot of humility, kind of like, you know what, I've had my own times in my own life where, you know, I've thought one thing and I've fought against it and fought against it and fought against it, and it turned out wasn't what I thought it really was. And I also learned when I started accepting that and trying to figure out a better way to do things, life got a lot better in a lot of different areas. And I feel like you have a lot of humility, kind of like, I'm not saying I'm better than you, I'm just saying life gets better when we just try to see other angles. I've had my time with it. I don't think I'm better than you. I feel like you might even have to say it to that level. Like, I don't think I'm better than you. I can relate to that struggle. I can also relate to, like, changing that point of view and how things get so much easier. This person is like, they need an about face. They've had a really difficult time in the past, but they don't feel like they have to defend all their choices anymore. And that may have a lot less to do with you and more about them and how they feel and how their life has gone. Because I feel like this is a disarming moment where they're just kind of like, I don't feel like I have to defend everything I've done up to this point. You bring in that air of humility, kind of like, well, life is about mistakes. It's just when you realize something isn't working to your benefit, doing your best to fix it and keep going, and realize you're still going to fall on your face the farther you go, but just keep fixing it, doing better, so the next time you fall on your face, it doesn't hurt as much, or it's not as damaging. Maybe the first time you fell on your face, you broke your nose. The next time you fell on your face, you might end up with a bruise, but at least you didn't break your nose. And as we keep going, maybe we'll have some stumbling blocks, but it won't be as bad. We won't end up with marks or scrapes or bumps or bruises, hopefully. And you're teaching them that. Like, we improve. We keep screwing up, but we're going to keep improving so we don't screw up as bad as we used to. That's what I really think that's what life's about. Getting back up and continuing on. You got the Four of Cups with the Knight of Swords, and you've got organization. I don't know. I'm just going to say what I'm getting from it. It will never be smooth sailing with this person, but they're going to hear you. I feel like I always have to be cautious and careful about how I communicate. I realize it doesn't take much to throw this way off balance, and once it goes off balance, it gets really difficult to put it back on balance. I feel like you constantly have to, like, it's kind of like a balance beam feel, except the width of it changes. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder, but I gotta pay attention to make sure I stay on the balance beam. Even if it's 2 feet wide, I still have to make sure I stay within that 2 feet. If it gets to be like 1 inch wide, like, it gets really hard, but I feel like I can do it, but I gotta pay attention and really, really pay attention to what I'm doing. But I always have to keep a lookout at, like, how things are going. I have to be careful how I handle this. I feel like the person I'm dealing with is very much worth my time, and I very much like them. I also realize they have their own way in life, which is another reason why I feel like I'm always on this balance beam type feel. You're doing good here. They're just acknowledging that this is going to take effort. Always. You are a really good connection for this. This is actually a very healthy, hopefully, like, evaluate it yourself. Do your own self-audit whether this is a healthy relationship. To me, it feels like a healthy relationship in the sense of, like, I feel a lot of spiritual growth both ways. I don't feel like anybody's dragging on anybody else. You're giving them the chance to think about things differently and feeling heard. They're giving you the chance to really work on things when you think, certain people I just can't get through with, I just can't get through to. This is somebody I feel like they're a challenge to get through to for you. But you can do it. And I feel like this is the spiritual growth for you. Kind of like, I didn't think this type of person would ever listen to me. I didn't think they'd ever want to hear what I had to say. But the spiritual growth on your side is kind of like, not only do they want to hear me, they are hearing me. It does take some work. It does take some patience. Take some molding of the situation, but it is worth it. It's weird for me because I think this is really good. It's not the easiest, but it's not really the hardest. It's kind of like making something, and like I have to take a lot of care and time, and it's very meaningful to me. You are very loved by this. That means a lot to you too. You are very loved by whoever this is. It's worthwhile. You are very loved, though. You're definitely very loved by whoever this is. I don't deny that in any sense. I know it's a general read, but I feel like for those of you this is going to click with, you are very much loved by whoever this is. It's just going to be a strained, sometimes it's going to be easier than other times. Very worthwhile. They advance spiritually, you advance spiritually. This is like a really good relationship. I keep saying that. I'm not saying it's not toxic at times. So evaluate that, do your own self-audit on it, but this is really actually good, is what I'm getting. All right. I'm going to shut this down here. I hope that helps. Thank you for watching. If you'd like a direct reading from me, shoot me an email, jamesforastral@gmail.com, james4astral@gmail.com. If you're interested in leaving a donation, there's information below for that as well. Thank you very much, and you have a good day.